Well, it's time now for a look at the day's top business news, and for that, I'm joined here in the studio by France 24's Brian Quinn. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Axie.
We're starting in the UK with a huge new contract for the country's largest defence firm.
So, Axie, BAE Systems has been awarded a nearly £4 billion contract to begin work on next-generation nuclear submarines for the Royal Navy. Now, the project is part of the AUKUS security pact between the UK, the US, and Australia. It was first announced in 2021. That deal resulted in the cancellation of Australia's order for some 12 French diesel submarines and sparked a major diplomatic dispute between Paris and its Anglophone allies. Well, BAE says the latest contract will fund its development operations over the next 5 years. The new submarines are expected to be delivered near the end of the next decade. The company's shipyard at Barrow-in-Furness already employs some 10,000 workers. It's expected to add 5,000 more to work on the project. UK Defence Secretary Grant Shapps announced the deal on Sunday. Here he is.
So we're building the new Dreadnought-class submarines that will carry Britain's nuclear deterrent into the middle of this century. And today, I can announce that we've signed contracts worth £4 billion with leading British businesses to drive forward the development of the most powerful attack submarines ever operated by the Royal Navy.
Let's get a check on the day's trading action. Not too much of it so far. Chinese markets are closed on Monday for the Golden Week holiday. That break in trading coming as new data shows factory activity in China expanding in September for the first time since April. The Seoul Stock Exchange closed today as well. Tokyo is open though. The Nikkei there just under the flat line. That's despite a new survey by the Bank of Japan showing business sentiment in the country improving in the latest quarter. The Bank of Japan announced new purchases of government bonds Monday amid a sell-off that sent bond yields to their highest in a decade. The yen, meanwhile, hitting an 11-month low against the dollar. Now, that's leading to speculation that the government could soon intervene on currency markets. That falling yen likely heading off bigger equities losses. Earlier, France 24 spoke with Xfinity analyst Han Tan about that. Here he is.
Keep in mind that Japanese stocks have this inverse relationship with the yen, right? So with the yen on that softer foot today, weakening back towards 150 against the US dollar, markets are just taking advantage of the fact that a weaker currency is seen as a boost for the revenue of its exporters. Also, there was some better than expected data out of Japan and China, well, Japan today and China over the weekend. So that makes for a relatively good day for Japanese stocks today.
China's nascent craft brewing industry has something to celebrate, as do Australian farmers. Beijing has dropped punishing import tariffs on Australian barley. First imposed in 2020, the taxes were widely seen as retaliation after Canberra called for an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. Oliver Ferry has the story.
After more than 3 years, Australian barley is making a comeback to China. The grain was one of a number of foodstuffs, including lobster and red wine, that were effectively excluded from the Chinese market in 2020 when Beijing slapped punitive tariffs on them. This was after then Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison called for an inquiry into the origins of COVID-19. For this Shanghai craft brewery, the return of Australian barley is welcome.
Australian malt could not be imported into the Chinese market for quite a long time. This was not very good for craft beer because we had to use more expensive malt, for example, Canadian and French malt.
And with Chinese consumers spending less in a sluggish economy, this could very well boost business.
There's a direct relationship between these prices and our production costs. It increases all the production costs of beer. And in the end, the customer foots the bill.
China often uses economic retaliatory measures against countries whose actions displease it. But the air between Beijing and Canberra is clearing, which should get trade moving again.
I expect that there's going to be more tariff removals in the coming months and coming years, such as in Australian red wine. I think you're going to see maybe not a return to 2017 numbers, but I think there's a possibility of a return to 2019 numbers.
In the meantime, it's a situation that will likely bring cheer to Chinese drinkers.
And finally, for business, the Netherlands announced on Sunday that it is halting extraction at the Groningen gas field, that is Europe's largest. Discovered in 1959, the field originally contained some 2.8 billion cubic meters of gas. 2.3 billion of that has already been extracted by the energy firms Shell and Esso. Those operations generated around 430 billion euros for the Dutch state. They also, though, created a disaster for residents of the Groningen region. For some 2 decades, locals have complained of earthquakes attributed to vacuum pockets created by the gas extraction, tremors which have caused widespread severe damage to homes and other buildings. Residents thus relieved by the shutdown, though experts warn that those earthquakes could continue for years. And it's something you see actually a lot in gas extraction. You're seeing it in the United States as well, Haxie, with fracking operations causing earthquakes nearby to those operations as well.
I'm sure those residents are very happy at that news today.
Yeah.
Brian Quinn with today's Business News. Thank you very much indeed.